So why is it Indians don't build products for the world? And we have few products such as Zoho and FreshBooks and some of these products. But apart from that, most of our products are actually serving just the local market. We don't have companies like Apple, Microsoft, and Google and OpenAI and some of these companies. Why is that? Let's take a look at it. Welcome to Raghulan. Thank you for all the love and support. If you like my videos, subscribe to the channel. And Expertisor Jobs is a platform that we're going to launch very soon, guys, and we'll just take a look at it. We haven't launched it yet, but we'll be opening some registration soon, and that will help you to get some jobs. And it's an AI based platform which will help you to match to right jobs and stuff. Okay, so why is it Indians don't build products for the world? And while we have like American companies building products for the world, and there is like European companies who do for the world, and why is it we don't have too many global brands? And let's go one by one. So the first and foremost thing, if you look at it, we are a country of 1.4 billion people. So I'll give you a story. I worked for a Portuguese-based company a few years ago, and so that company had got a branch in Australia. That's not really even a very old company that has got a branch in Australia, and they've been doing some work within Australia. And so from an Indian perspective, coming from India, I don't even see why do they need to come to Australia to establish a company, because they are not even a big company in their own country. So now when I asked to one of the senior managers and stuff, they said like, we cannot survive within our own country. Now, that is something too deep actually, because as an Indian, we may not even realize. Let's say if you're any part of India, if you're an Indian, if you register a company within India, you're legally allowed to sell your product or services to 1.4 billion people. You can take their money, you can render a service, you can sell a product, and pretty much that 1.4 billion people is your access. So let's say if there is a country like a very small country such as Vatican or Italy or Portugal, for example, the total population is going to be in millions, not in billion. So now with that population, if you start a company, that company will not be able to make a successful growth with the population that they have. And now they will be forced to go to the next country or to go global to even sustain or to grow. So now if you look at it from an Indian company perspective and from a company coming from a small country, they have a necessity to go global. It is not something they do it because they are founders who have got a big vision or anything like that. They don't have a choice. Whereas companies in India, they are pretty comfortable doing business within India because that's a huge market. That's 1.4 billion. That's like, like out of 7 billion people, we literally have like around 2 billion people to 1.5 billion people with us. And reaching them is going to be a big task for any company. Because if you look at most of the European countries, they have companies which might have a global brand, and that brand may not be as huge as Nestle or Apple or Google or Microsoft. But the reason they are global is basically just for this factor. With their one single country, they will not be able to reach that much market for them to sustain or to grow. So they have to force to go to global. Whereas Indian companies, they don't have to. Oyo is like pretty comfortable doing business in India. They don't even have to be competing Airbnb in overseas. And same with if you look at China has got Didi, and that's a app for like Uber. That app basically took over Uber, and that's because like their local market, they are able to sustain, they are able to grow, and that's more than enough for them. They don't even want to go global. So that's the first thing. So we have a local market which is pretty strong. It's a huge population and it's a huge market, and market cap is huge, and we are able to sustain locally. So that's first choice. And second, each country has got a set of things that they sell. So for example, traditionally, if you're coming from like around like 100 years ago or something like that, Indian companies were selling spices and fabric and food materials and food products, allied products and stuff like that. Now, these is all the products that we were selling at, and most cases we didn't plan on building a brand to sell it. And so that all come at a later point after independence. We started thinking about brands globally and stuff like that. But what happened was like, we don't need a brand to sell these things. We were just traders, and that is what sometimes continued throughout the journey. We are happily selling as a wholesaler. We are happily selling as a middleman, and but rather than we create a brand and then we take the responsibility and accountability of a brand, and that is one reason. And then if you look at the investor dynamics, so many VCs, they actually fail with most of the unicorns that they select, almost like 95% of the VCs. And when they invest money on a unicorn startup or something pretty brand new like in US, and many of those startups fail because the founders, we'll come to the founders later part, but the point is like the VCs don't really have a clue of how to build these companies or how to pick a company and all that, and they basically follow the wave. And but if you look at the same set of VCs and investors and who are successful, they basically invest on traditional businesses rather than something as a startup, something as a new idea. They invest on something like a supermarket, something like Big Bazaar or something like that, something which is pretty proven, which is traditional, and which has got some traction and some revenue coming in. So people just go for something which is safer. And so investor dynamics is basically majority of the, even today, investor interest is basically towards a company which is a safer side of investment rather than creating something like SpaceX or something. And the branding. So when we actually design any branding things, even for example, if you take Zoho, we recently been using Zoho as well as in Google. I have seen Google grow for the last 10 years because I've been using Google and Zoho for quite a few years. And if you look at it, the colors, the scheme, the branding, the UI, UX, a lot of these things, how come Google is better? Technically, they both are $1 billion company. So how come Google is better? And why Zoho still lacks that sort of like a minimalistic feel? So what is the difference these companies bring in? So one thing is like when I worked with designers in Australia and US, so most of the time they think differently compared to our Indian designers. Indian designers are basically, even the client, when they ask for some of those design changes and stuff, we are not allowed to think abstract. We are not allowed to think beyond the scope. It's like for any questions that comes to us, let's say if you do something which is not in line with the actual design, but it looks sort of different and cool or something like that, the client would say like, no, this is not relevant, this is not nice, put a better picture, put a picture which is more beautiful. So then it all comes down to cramping more things within a small space, making sure that we get the maximum out of small money that we pay. It all comes down to finally your product design, your branding, your company and all that. It all comes to these ideologies rather than, we focus on something which truly represent who we are and what we're going to do and all that sort of stuff. And that way, I really have to appreciate, I've worked with plenty of Indian designers and a lot of white designers as well. And these guys actually do make a difference. Their designs are basically doesn't comply with what we want, but it actually creates a sort of like a new sort of idea towards who your company is, your branding is and stuff. And comparatively, when you take Zoho and Gmail, for example, Zoho interface still lacks the modern look. For example, if you take Zoho email for an example today, and if you go to Theme Forest and if you find an email template or messaging app template or something like that, you will see most of those templates are similar to what Zoho does. So technically, it looks like they took a template from Theme Forest and then they put an email called Zoho email, which is $1 billion product, not even a million, it's $1 billion product. That sort of stuff, so branding, when it comes to branding and the sense of design and sense of styling and all that sort of stuff, most of our Indian brands are actually, it looks Indian, simple as that. It looks Indian. It doesn't look Chinese, it doesn't look Indonesian, it doesn't look European, it doesn't look American. So it looks pure Indian. And most of the products that come from US, they look global. And, they look like a product which I don't feel like, I'll if I want it, if I show it to people, that it doesn't give an impression that, it's an inferior product. So I don't know if I put it in the right way, I might offend you, but this is what I feel. So, we have phones that is coming from India as well, and we have phones coming from Korea, we have phones coming from US. So why is it American products such as Apple, why is it because Korean products such as Samsung has got a global reach? What about Indian products? Why the Indian products have not reached globally? So even though they had a very successful run within India, like Reliance and all that, why they have not reached globally? So I think the design perspective is not aligned with the global idea of a brand or something. So that again comes down to the Indian mentality of trying to do maximum with a small budget and trying to put as much as possible within a design and things like that, screwing things out to the design. And the next thing is the founders, finally. So the founders are actually my biggest worries, because I built around 12 startups, and most of the startups that I built previously, like around 13 which I built, are with a lot of white founders and stuff. Even now I have white founders as well as Indian founders. The starking difference is the white people and Indian people, they both go to job and then they build a startup. The white people clearly know the job is not my first priority. My startup is my first priority. Even though they do the job properly and they work the same amount of hours what needs to be done and all that, but they take the startup very seriously. Whereas Indian founders, they go to the job, they treat the job as a primary thing because that is what gives them salaries to pay the bills and whatnot. They treat the startup, their own vision, as a side hustle. They treat it like a hobby. They treat it like something that, it's okay. If it fails, it doesn't matter. Whereas with a white guy, technically he will go broke trying to build the product and trying to build a vision. I'm not saying that Indian founders are not like that. There are Indian founders, they do like that. We do a separate video of the issues with the Indian founders. But when it comes to building this sort of global products, Indian founders, many of the Indian founders that I worked with, they don't take their startup journey seriously. And when you don't take your startup journey seriously, when you're not believing in your own vision and your own dream, how your customer is going to believe it? Most of the customers, they wouldn't even choose your product because you don't choose your own product. You don't believe in your own product. You don't take risk for your own product. Why would I risk my money? So even today morning, I was giving some, checking the progress of some of my startup co-founders and stuff. Of course, they have a happy Diwali time. I understand all that. But, the sense of urgency is like, we cannot 100% forget that there is a startup that we're building. That is like a founder's thing. As a founder, I would be surprised if it's like if you look at all the surprised founder, successful founders, they would have crossed all the Diwalis and all the birthdays and all that sort of stuff. But if you look at them, people have to pull them from their vision to the Diwali celebration. Their family members have to pull them there. They have to drag them from their vision to the Diwali celebration, to the birthday parties and all that sort of stuff. But the failed entrepreneurs or failed founders or basically forget the startup when they have a celebration. Forget the startup when there is a nice movie. Forget the startup when there is a party. So I think it's high time that with the advent of AI that is coming and taking up a lot of jobs and opportunities, and it's not taking it is actually taking into a new direction. There is going to be new jobs created as well, but it's going to be into a space where startup is going to become a new normal. So for just startup and freelancing and being adaptable to different technologies, that is going to be a new normal. And the current way of we are targeting LPAs is not going to work out. Okay, we'll see again another video, guys. Hope you enjoy this video, and I would like to see your comment on what you think, and we'll see again another video. Thank you so much, and cheers.